They want to try and get back on the front foot in terms of policy, act like a party that is serious and could potentially be in government. And at the same time, they are signalling to their base. So you had this split message from Richard Tice today, which is partly that they're going to be the party that actually builds lots of housing, including primarily today social housing. And he's going to talk more about that at conference. But of course, by saying that British-born people are going to be prioritised, not even British people, is very obviously a signal to the reform faithful. It's as if the party, what this suggests is the party is not focusing anymore on trying to build a broad coalition.
Mikhailova, our political editor here at Times Radio, joins us now here in the studio. Hi to you, Anna.
Hi, John.
It's good to see you. So talk to me about this Reform UK policy. What do they hope to gain from it, and some of the practical questions that have been raised against it?
So they hope to gain support with their voters, really. I think that's what it boils down to. There were two aims this morning at the press conference. One is to start preparing the groundwork for their big conference coming up in 2 weeks' time, which is quite an important moment for reform, which has had quite a shaky couple of months, particularly in the press. And so they want to try and get back on the front foot in terms of policy, act like a party that is serious and could potentially be in government. And at the same time, they are signalling to their base. So you had this split message from Richard Tice today, which is partly that they're going to be the party that actually builds lots of housing, including primarily today social housing. And he's going to talk more about that at conference. But of course, by saying that British-born people are going to be prioritised, not even British people, is very obviously a signal to the reform faithful. It's as if the party, what this suggests is the party is not focusing anymore on trying to build a broad coalition, as it was more, a year ago, for example, and now is shoring up the core support.
Yeah, I mean, Britain's first. That is the message, and the appeal from their point of view and who they're aiming that at is perfectly clear. But when you reprioritise different categories of people, by definition, you're deprioritising different categories of people. And how you do that, where you draw lines and how, that's where some of the questions are coming in.
Absolutely. And I found it very interesting to see at this press conference, we had Richard Tice and Lee Anderson side by side, so two senior figures in the party. And Lee Anderson was a lot more comfortable leaning into this anti-foreigners idea and just saying explicitly, we're not going to apologise for prioritising British people. And Richard Tice, you could tell, was just a lot more uncomfortable with that idea of it. He wanted to talk more about the housing element. He kept saying things like, well, if we build more houses, this sort of won't be an issue. And he was repeatedly asked about this suggestion that they would split British citizens into those that merit and those that don't. So in that category, British-born is apparently a higher class of citizen, according to this policy. And when he was pressed by that on that repeatedly, he just didn't want to go there. He weaseled out of it, to be honest, a couple of times by saying, oh, well, most of those people have indefinite leave to remain, therefore that doesn't apply. But they don't all have indefinite leave to remain. A lot of them are actually full-blown British citizens, tax-paying citizens,
yes,
etc. But I just found it interesting that he personally clearly did not want to go there in the same way. And I think, when these kind of policies are scrutinised and properly assessed, that's when you will get splits within the party itself between more moderates like Richard Tice and others in the party who are much happier taking a harder line.
Yeah, listening to Richard Tice this morning on Breakfast on Times Radio, the phrase kept coming up, supporting, helping people who are doing the right thing, which just naturally implies that the other categories are not quite doing the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, and Reform's answer to that is that when social housing was brought in the first place, there was a way of, prioritising people as well, and that there just isn't enough money and it isn't enough housing to go around. But, of course, we know that there are different ways of saying the same thing.
And as for the the development of a larger affordable housing and social housing sector in this country. The promises of 50,000 new homes a year. But Richard Tice also didn't. He said that's going to be accomplished without drawing on taxpayers' funds at all. Has that been explained? Is it possible to explain that?
Not particularly, and when asked specifically about why Reform's pledges would be different from, for example, Labour's pledges, Andy Burnham's come in saying quite similar on social housing, that he wants to make that a priority. Richard Tice said that, and Lee Anderson were saying that effectively Reform's plans are different because they actually believe in it and they have the conviction to do it. There's an argument, of course, that when senior politicians have political will, they can make things happen, but it certainly does not solve the detail. I think we will get more on this at conference. They will talk more about building on brownfield sites. But at the moment, yes, they are big, broad brush promises without a huge amount of detail on how to get there.
I think you were saying this morning, this is naturally enough, Reform UK and its leadership just trying to get hold of the agenda, to appear to have the initiative, to have ideas, just turning the conversation their way. And what is the settled view now? There will be different views depending on who you talk to. The view then in the party hierarchy about the state of things with the party now, especially since the by-election in Clacton, which Nigel Farage won and is now reinstalled as an MP.
Well, I think it's hard to escape the fact that there is quite a lot of infighting, a lot of it disagreements, and much of it is spilling out in public, either on social media or through briefings to newspapers. But we're in this slightly strange world where, because Reform has this anti-establishment and then the media is the establishment position, then you get people within Reform telling things to journalists, and when those journalists write it, the other senior figures in Reform then come out and say that's all made up. So it's quite a Trumpian playbook on that front. But the inescapable point is that there is certainly concern at within Reform that the party, while still doing very well in the polls, and I think that is important to point out, that it has a long way to go still in terms of professionalising, moving away from just being about Nigel Farage and completely dependent on him and his standing, and trying to build that broader coalition that can actually possibly get a majority. More and more people think that it's not really likely to win a majority government, that at most it would be a coalition situation.
Right, and the 3 years to go. Who can possibly know at this point? And meanwhile, we still have Nigel Farage now back in the sights, in the crosshairs of the Standards Committee, apart from anything else, over the £5 million gift that he had on the way to becoming an MP. That certainly was never going to go away. It hasn't gone away. Now there'll be proceedings on that with who knows where. It could end up in yet another by-election.
Well, it could, but there are many stages to go before then. And don't forget that while the Standards Commissioner has reopened his probe after Nigel Farage won the by-election, that process could still take months. I spoke to someone last week who knows that process very well, who said that we could be looking for, it could still be a very long time until the Commissioner comes up with his report. That would then go to the committee in Parliament, who would recommend a sanction. If that sanction, if it's a suspension, would meet the threshold of a recall petition, then that would go to the voters of Clacton. If they decide that merits a by-election, then it will lead to a by-election. But there are, as you can see, lots and lots of steps and quite a while to go. And Reform has this way of, they think, batting that away by saying, look, the voters of Clacton have resoundingly voted for him, so this is all just an establishment stitch-up. That is going to continue to be the attack line from
how far that washes is another question altogether. Anna Mikhailova, political editor at Times Radio, thank you for joining me.